your man X on the Breakfast Club trying to make me look like trying to make me seem like a sucker for love type of dude, and ain't nothing like that.
Fredro Starr. I got one on Baby Most. As soon as I land in Cali, I see him in the club. You know, he a little loud. Yo, son, what up, baby? Yo, he that nigga. Yo, good man. Yo, who's shorty? Yo, stuffing, son. You got that? That's you. Yo, do you? Nah, son, I'm saying that's all you, baby. Stuffing.
Fredro Starr thought he understood chaos until he met DMX.
DMX was dangerous, man. Like, not dangerous, but he's like, when you around him, he's like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
What started as brotherhood on tour turned into a silent war over style, dominance, and reputation. Tour after tour, cypher after cypher, the tension built until DMX decided to end the noise in the only way he knew how, publicly, brutally, and without mercy.
And let them know ain't nothing sweet over here. And that's it, man. Ain't nothing to talk about, ain't no beef. X know me. You know how to get at me.
But this wasn't just a rap feud. Behind the scenes, DMX was already dodging real street danger. So when Fredro tried to test him, X didn't bark. He bit.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's going front. Oh, son, it's nothing. I mean, yo, bad baby, it's nothing. You know, she ain't nothing.
Meanwhile, he fall in love with you.
So you too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk about it. When DMX first crossed paths with Onyx, it wasn't through label meetings or industry setups. It was through raw proximity. This was the mid-1990s, a time when every rapper in New York was trying to prove who barked the loudest. Onyx already had that energy on lock. Bald heads, black Timberlands, permanent scowls. Their sessions were closed off. No outsiders, no smiles. As Fredro Starr would later say, you couldn't just walk into an Onyx session. You had to be thorough.
And you had to be thorough to come in the studio type.
So who
it was just locked down
who made
like
it
that.
in the studio? Who got in there?
Nobody.
It was just
At that point, nobody.
So when a young DMX from Yonkers walked into a Jersey basement studio in 1995, nobody expected much. But when he started rhyming, the whole room changed temperature. Fredro remembered it clearly. DMX had that same cold intensity that Onyx had built their whole identity around. Sticky Fingaz would later joke that DMX could have been the fifth Onyx member. His voice, his rage, even the way he moved in the booth.
He could have been a missing Onyx member.
Guys.
He could have been a missing
Somebody
Onyx
told Fredro the L shit. What they said?
They said DMX is Onyx all
together.
It wasn't imitation, it was recognition. They were cut from the same cloth. The problem was, that kind of similarity doesn't make for easy friendship. It breeds competition. By the time they officially linked up in 1998 for Shut 'Em Down, both camps were fully formed beasts. Onyx were veterans, hardened by the early 90s Def Jam grind. DMX was the new alpha, fresh off the release of It's Dark and Hell is Hot, running on pure adrenaline. When they met in that studio again, there wasn't any small talk, just beats, smoke, and tension. Fredro admitted later that he knew exactly what kind of record it was going to be. Not a collaboration, but a sparring session. Every verse sounded like it was thrown with bad intentions. When Shut 'Em Down dropped, the energy was wild. Two styles that should have canceled each other out somehow amplified one another instead. It was pure, unfiltered aggression. On stage, that same energy turned almost dangerous. During the Survival of the Illest tour, you could see the tension, not hostility, but that uneasy respect that only exists between two men who see too much of themselves in each other. Fredro once said, "When you're around X, you never knew what was gonna happen." He meant it literally. One minute, DMX would be praying backstage with the crew. The next, he'd be revving a tour bus like he was ready to drive it himself. Everyone around him stayed alert, not because they feared him, but because he carried a kind of unpredictable spark that could flip the whole room upside down. Yet, for all that volatility, there was a real bond there. Fredro and DMX were both born fighters who led with heart before logic. On tour, they'd do push-ups in hotel lobbies, clown each other, compete in everything. It wasn't fake camaraderie. It was mutual respect built on shared chaos.
Every stage, DMX driving tour buses.
How you gonna say he's driving the tour bus?
Driving the tour bus.
When the tour ended, the energy lingered. They weren't best friends, but they were brothers in spirit, bound by that same need to dominate every room they walked into. Fans noticed it too. Whenever they performed Shut 'Em Down live, the crowd could feel that crackle in the air, not beef, but electricity, like something might go off at any second. Behind the scenes though, there was also an understanding. Both camps respected the unwritten rules of that hardcore rap world: loyalty, authenticity, survival. DMX showed Onyx nothing but love, even when the industry started to pit them against each other. For a while, it worked. The mutual respect stayed solid, but underneath that surface, the same fire that made them click was also what made their connection so fragile. Because with men like that, men who built their entire identity on dominance, friendship was always temporary. The moment it crossed into something personal, something unspoken, all that brotherhood could turn into rivalry overnight. You may trace the fallout between DMX and Fredro Starr back to a diss track or radio comment, but the real fire started long before the public saw any smoke. Almost 10 years before the 2012 blow-up, there was an incident that quietly fractured the trust between two men who once called each other brothers. It happened around 2002, when DMX was deep in his Hollywood run, and Fredro was still one of his closest industry allies. What began as a casual night out became the first crack in something that had once looked unbreakable. Fredro brought a woman to that premiere, someone he described later as a shorty, just another groupie tagging along for the night. In his words, he even gave X the green light, told him, "That's you, son." In street language, that's permission, a pass, a friendly gesture. But DMX being DMX, things never stayed that simple.
Fredro Starr. I got one on Baby Most. Man, as soon as I land in Cali, I see him in the club. You know, he a little loud. Yo, son, what up, baby? Yo, he that nigga. Yo, good man. Yo, shorty. Yo, stuffing, son. You got that? That's yours. Yo, nah, son, I'm saying that's all you, baby. Stuffing.
He later went on The Breakfast Club a decade later and retold the story as if it were a comedy sketch. He painted Fredro as the jealous friend who caught feelings, claiming Fredro kept calling and texting the woman all night, asking if she was still with him. Then X added another layer. The woman got pregnant. The way he told it, she barely spoke English, wasn't a citizen, and, according to him, got citizenship because of the child. It was ugly, disrespectful, and public. A story that should have stayed buried.
And she spoke very little English. She wasn't even a citizen. But, you know, thanks to the baby, now she's a citizen.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah. God bless
Helping
America.
women all over the world.
God bless America. Yeah, yeah.
For Fredro, hearing it live on air wasn't just embarrassing, it was betrayal. In his own retelling, he said, "Everybody laughing, everybody thinks it's a joke, but when my name came up, I didn't take it as a joke." To understand why this hit so deep, you have to look at DMX's history. He had a pattern of turning private mess into public theater. A few years earlier, he'd done the same thing to Monique Wayne, a woman who'd sued him for paternity in 2004. To fight that case, DMX went to the press and claimed she had raped him while he was asleep in a hotel room. He even mocked her looks, saying she wasn't attractive enough for him to remember sleeping with her. It was cruel and reckless, and it backfired. Wayne sued for defamation and won a $1.5 million judgment after DMX failed to appear in court. The ruling made it clear X's habit of weaponizing personal stories wasn't just emotional fallout, it had financial consequences. By 2012, DMX was still carrying that same impulsive energy. His appearance on The Breakfast Club wasn't calculated, it was instinct. He thought he was telling a wild story, but in reality, he was reopening a wound that had never healed. Fredro had kept quiet for years, never bringing it to interviews, never using it for publicity. But when X threw his name into a national broadcast for laughs, it crossed the one line both men understood: respect. Now, beneath the surface of that personal fallout was a deeper artistic tension that had been bubbling for years. Fredro and Sticky Fingaz had both hinted, subtly at first, that DMX's barking, growling delivery wasn't original. They believed Onyx had done it first, years before X broke through. Sticky even posted online asking fans, was DMX a copycat or a big dog? It was a question that sounded playful on the surface, but carried real weight in hip-hop culture.
When DMX came out, everyone said, man, he's a copy version of Onyx.
Because in this game, accusing someone of stealing a style is like calling them fake. It cuts to the core of authenticity, the currency rappers live and die by. And for DMX, authenticity wasn't just part of his act, it was his act. Every growl, every bark, every raw verse was an expression of who he believed himself to be. To say he copied someone else was to erase his identity. That's the one thing he never tolerated. So when the Breakfast Club story and the Onyx comments collided, it wasn't just gossip anymore. It was war on two fronts, personal and creative. Fredro saw the interview as disrespect to his name, and DMX saw the style accusations as disrespect to his soul. It's ironic, really. Two men who mirrored each other's energy so perfectly ended up locked in a conflict over who owned it first. Fredro's reaction to the disrespect was measured at first. In an interview, he broke it down. "Yo, he tried to make me look like a sucker for love type of dude," he said. "That's not me. He using my name to catch laughs, and it ain't funny."
Your man X on the Breakfast Club trying to make me look like trying to make me seem like a sucker for love type of dude, and ain't nothing like that, you know what I'm saying?
Fredro confirmed the basic story. Yes, there was a woman. Yes, she was a jump-off. But what angered him was the disrespect. In their world, there was an unspoken code. Don't drag another man's name into your mess, especially not on national radio. He explained it simply. He know me. He know how to get at me. You don't go on no radio show and talk like that.
X know me. You know how to get at me. Call me, man. That's what you gotta do. But ain't no games over here, man.
For most people, DMX's words would have been just another viral soundbite, another unpredictable X moment. But for Fredro Starr, it was a line crossed, and he wasn't going to let it slide. That's why, days after DMX's Breakfast Club interview, he appeared online. No entourage, no studio lighting, just Fredro in a hoodie, standing in front of a mic. He looked straight into the camera. On his Firestar 16 Bars web series, he dropped a freestyle that left no doubt who he was talking about. His voice was calm, but the message was cold. "Yo, it's your boy Fredro Starr," he said. "We going off the top this week. No Blackberries, no iPhones, straight raw."
Ain't no written nothing. No Blackberries, no iPhones, none of that. We don't do that over here. So check this out.
Then the beat kicked in. It was gritty, simple, New York drum pattern, and the fire came with it. He didn't call out DMX by name in a rage. Instead, he responded in the only language that made sense to him, bars.
If he ever tried it again, he'd be in of the firing pin.
It wasn't about violence. It was about restoring balance. In the world they came from, you don't talk about another man's name, his woman, or his pride. Fredro had sent a death threat on wax. And even for a genre built on machismo and aggression, the delivery felt real, too real. For Fredro, it wasn't about clout. He said later, it wasn't beef. It was just letting him know, don't play with my name. But to outsiders, it looked like a full-on declaration of war. DMX, though, he didn't flinch. He didn't release a diss track. He didn't touch a mic. Instead, he went to TMZ, the last place you'd expect a street legend to fire back from. And that's where he ended it. Not with a track, not with a crew, but with one of the coldest dismissals ever caught on camera. DMX was asked about Fredro's freestyle, the death threats, the firing pen, the whole tough guy act. X barely blinked. He smiled, looked straight into the camera, and said, "I ain't worried about him. He's a midget. He can't even reach my knee." That line alone changed the entire temperature of the room. The firing pen talk dissolved instantly. The supposed danger turned into comedy. DMX had reduced a whole street challenge into a size joke, and somehow, it worked. It wasn't even about height. It was about hierarchy. DMX was saying, "You're not my equal. You're not even in reach." Then came the knockout. X leaned in and delivered a line that buried Fredro Starr's whole image. All he is a sitcom Moshe gangsta. He should stick to being a reality gangsta, cause that's all he's good for. It was vicious, and it was perfect. Everyone in hip-hop knew exactly what that meant. Fredro Starr wasn't just a rapper, he had a real acting career. He'd starred in Clockers, Sunset Park, and The Wire, but the world remembered him most as Q, Brandy's boyfriend on the 90s UPN sitcom Moesha, the nice guy, the teenage heartthrob, the one mothers approved of.
So where are we going for the room?
Girl, anywhere you want.
DMX took that clean image, the one that made Fredro a household name, and flipped it against him. He made Moshe Gangsta sound like the ultimate insult. Suddenly, Every threat Fredro made sounded staged, like a leftover script from a canceled show. The insult hit because it pulled from truth. And in hip-hop, truth is everything. Commentators caught on fast. That type of name could stick with Fredro, one host said, and it did. The same streets that once saw Onyx as pitbulls in Timberlands now saw Fredro as a sitcom star playing tough. DMX didn't need to threaten him back. He just laughed him out of the conversation. It was psychological warfare. Fredro had used violence as his language. DMX used embarrassment. And that's what made X so dangerous. Not just his bark, but how effortlessly he could make someone small with words. But here's what made that silence even louder. DMX's life was filled with people who really would pull triggers, the kind of men Fredro claimed to be, and X never hid from it. Around the same time this exchange played out online, real danger followed him everywhere. In one story that later surfaced through court documents, it was alleged that Fat Joe, another New York heavyweight, had ordered his crew to confront DMX after a verbal clash in Miami. According to the lawsuit, the command was direct. If he acts up, take the hammer, meaning if X resisted, shoot him.
DMX had Fat Joe so angry, according to these documents, that he wanted to see them unalive, and he actually put some effort into this happening.
The assault never happened because DMX didn't come outside that night, but that single decision might have saved his life. And it wasn't even the only time his name hovered over real violence. Years later, Fat Joe himself told a wild story about being alongside DMX in Angola by a local warlord named Rukino, a warlord so feared that even hotel staff refused to look him in the eye. DMX, already living a chaotic life at home, had now found himself in a real-life hostage situation halfway across the world, held by a man responsible for actual bloodshed.
They said, this guy just kidnapped DMX too. This guy kidnapped people. You were a scary guy. I said, I'm figuring it out. He said, you call this number at any time. We'll come pick you up at the parking.
That's the kind of life DMX was moving through. Gun talk wasn't entertainment for him. It was background noise. So when Fredro Starr went online to rap about firing pens and crying friends at funerals, DMX didn't even flinch. Compared to what he'd seen, lawsuits, death threats, abductions, a YouTube freestyle wasn't danger. It was a nuisance. So he laughed. He called him a midget, a Moesha gangsta, and then he walked away. Across forums, blogs, and early YouTube comment sections, fans argued over who won. Some called Fredro's freestyle real rap, saying he brought back that raw, unfiltered energy that Onyx had in the 90s. Others said DMX killed him with one sentence: sitcom Moesha gangsta. It became a meme before memes even had names. Fredro, on the other hand, looked furious in interviews, trying to make sense of it. But once you become the punchline, there's no clean way back. Magazines picked up the story too. XL, The Source, and Hip Hop DX ran quick write-ups. Most short, but with a clear tone. DMX wasn't feuding, he was shrugging. One journalist summed it up perfectly. Fredro's dissing for clout, DMX is living through court cases. And that was the real truth behind it. Fredro's anger lived online. DMX's chaos lived everywhere else. In courtrooms, addiction clinics, and real confrontations that could have ended his life. When fans looked closer, they saw it. Fredro was pretending to live the life that DMX was barely surviving. That's why X's silence hit so hard. He wasn't ignoring Fredro because he was scared or above it. He just didn't have time for someone acting tough when his own reality was already tougher. Behind the scenes, Onyx tried to cool the situation. In later interviews, both Sticky Fingaz and Fredro described DMX as family. They said he was unpredictable, full of energy, but never fake. Sticky told a story about the Def Jam tours, how they all shared buses, hotels, sometimes even rooms just to cut costs. He said the label made it look like a family for marketing, but behind the scenes, it was one. They fought, they argued, they competed, but it was love underneath. For a while though, Fredro couldn't back down publicly. He'd said too much on camera. He had to stand by his words. But even in his tone, you could hear it. The heat was cooling off. The anger was mostly pride. He didn't hate DMX. He just didn't want to be disrespected. He said in an interview later, "It wasn't beef. It was something I had to check, out of respect. We're grown men. It's all love." That was January 2014, a year and a half after everything blew up. Fredro Starr buried the hatchet. Meanwhile, DMX never mentioned Fredro's name again. Not once. Not in a verse, not in an interview, not in passing. It was the ultimate dismissal, as if the whole episode didn't even exist. And that silence became part of his legend. Even years later, when Onyx members reflected on that Def Jam family era, you could hear both nostalgia and respect. Even with his reservations, Fredro still said it. DMX was dangerous. Not in a bad way. You just didn't know what he was gonna do next.
DMX was dangerous, man. Like, not dangerous, but he's like, when you around him, he's like, you don't know what's gonna happen. You know what I mean?
And that unpredictability was what separated him from everyone else. You couldn't play chess with a man who didn't play by the same rules. Fredro had tried to go bar for bar. DMX responded by walking away, and somehow, walking away made him look even stronger. By the time the story faded, Fredro had moved on. Onyx dropped new music, and DMX's battles shifted inward. Addiction, bankruptcy, probation violations. The world could see he wasn't just acting tough. His whole life was one long fight. In hindsight, the irony was cruel. DMX wasn't mocking Fredro out of malice. He was exposing a gap between image and experience, between a man performing danger and a man living inside it. Fredro's world was Hollywood, sitcoms, tours, and cameras. DMX's was courts, rehab centers, and survival. The same week people laughed about Moesha Gangsta, DMX was paying millions in court-ordered damages to Monique Wayne. He also owed the IRS nearly $700,000. And he was still battling an addiction that began when someone laced his first blunt at 14.
We came back with a blunt rolled up. And as I'm counting the money, he laced the blunt. And I said, I was impressed. Well, I don't really smoke, nigga. At it. And he passed the blunt around. And, wow.
So, when people called DMX a reality gangsta, it wasn't an insult. It was truth. His life was the real thing. The public saw that contrast. That's why when Fredro later said there was no beef, fans respected it. They'd both said what they needed to say, but only one man's silence carried the weight of everything he'd been through. DMX never needed a closing statement. His life had already said enough. Years after the tension, Fredro sat down in interviews and began revisiting those old memories. You could hear it in his voice. The weight wasn't bitterness anymore. It was gratitude. He talked about how, back in the late 90s, when Onyx had moved out to Jersey, they spent so much time in Harlem that people thought they were from there. One day, they heard DMX was shooting the Rough Riders anthem video just up the street. Without hesitation, they pulled up, jumped out of the Jeep, and joined the chaos. DMX gave them Rough Riders shirts, and suddenly, Onyx were on top of the truck in one of the most iconic rap videos of that era. Fredro smiled when he told that story. That day wasn't business. It wasn't competition. It was hip-hop in its purest form, spontaneous, loud, and real. We was just showing love, he said. And DMX, he received it the same way.
The Hard Knock Life tour, then the Rough Rider tour. But that one right there, that's the one where I was like, what the fuck is this tour? Like, I want to go to one of these shows.
Fredro and DMX hung around each other often after that, and when you look back now, it makes sense. DMX wasn't just another rapper in that era. He was a force of nature, the kind of person whose presence filled a room before he even spoke. Sticky Fingaz once said that when DMX showed up, it was like the air changed. Thicker, heavier, alive. He didn't need an entourage or security. Fredro said the same thing. DMX would pull up to video sets alone, just him and his dog. No driver, no hype. He'd stay all day, no complaints. That said more about him than any verse could. When DMX died in April 2021, the shock cut deep. He was only 50. A heart attack, tied to years of pain and addiction, finally silenced one of hip-hop's rawest voices. The world mourned him. Not just fans, but peers, rivals, people who had once gone toe-to-toe with him. The energy around that loss was massive.
I just feel as though I just lost my brother, you know what I'm saying? So now I'm in this industry right here, and this is a nasty industry, so now I just feel as though I'm just in here by myself.
And among the tributes, Fredro Starr released his own, a song titled R.I.P. DMX. It wasn't flashy or defensive. It was love, plain and simple. Fredro called X special, someone whose pain and connection to God were unlike anyone else's. When Fredro talks about X now, you can tell he means it. The laughter fades, and what remains is respect. A quiet understanding that DMX didn't just dominate the game, he lived it, felt it, and paid for it in full. Love is love, Fredro said in that last interview, his tone more like a eulogy than a quote. This whole hip-hop thing, it's a movie, and X, man, he was one of the realest characters in it. By the end, the rivalry was just background noise. The music, the energy, and the legacy was what remained. Two warriors from the same era who fought the same fight and finally saw each other for what they were, reflections.